Go.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReallyFactor.com studio. Going to be on the Hannity Show around 6:15 or so Pacific time this evening. Stick around for that. So much to get to between now and the close of the program. I want to start with, before we get to critical race theory, and this mayor who's canceling the Pledge of Allegiance, small-town mayor in Colorado. I'm not kidding. Cancels the Pledge of Allegiance, says it's too divisive to recite it. We'll get to all that in just a second. But first, Al Sharpton. The fact that this guy is relevant, that he can leave his house in the daytime, stuns me. It just stuns me. He is a Democrat kingmaker. Google Sharpton Democrat kingmaker and stand back. Every one of the major Democratic candidates stopped off in New York and kissed his ring to get his support. So here he is on the Morning Joe show. Joe Scarborough, put a bookmark there. We're going to come back to that because Joe Scarborough used to be a member of Congress, Republican. So Joe Scarborough, as you know, is the chief host of the Morning Joe show on MSNBC Hee Haw that I watch so you don't have to. And Reverend Sharpton is a frequent guest on his show. And as usual, Joe licked him to death, and Sharpton was Sharpton. Play number one, please.
Certainly we shouldn't sit back and congratulate ourselves, but we should not condemn ourselves for the steps and the progress that has been made. And I think that one of the problems that we have, which is why I call them latte liberals, is we're having people assess what has happened that they were not the ones that it was happening to. So if you're sitting around sipping lattes in the Hamptons talking about what's going on in Harlem, you may not know the progress that we have made in terms of going from not being able to vote in my mother and father's generation to electing a black president in my generation, because you were never discriminated against. And I think that a lot of people have taken advantage of our pain rather than trying to ease our pain, whether it comes to race, whether it comes to gender, whether it comes to those in the LGBTQ community. And really, I think it is also antithetical to keeping movements going to act like we're not making progress. People need victories to keep fighting. People need to know that they are not having an endless battle that will ultimately lead to defeat. What empowers people is to know that they're not fighting for nothing and that they are achieving things, so they keep going. And I think that there are those that are in the business of pessimism, and that dampens forward progress and dampens movements. It doesn't advance them.
Where do you start with this guy? Get a dictionary, look up the word chutzpah, and there'll be a big picture of this guy smiling. A lot of people have taken advantage of our pain. You mean like you? Now, as I said, he was on the Joe Scarborough show. Scarborough used to be a member of Congress. I'm holding in my baby brown libertarian fingers House Congressional Resolution 270, submitted 8 of March 2000 by one Joe Scarborough. Quote, whereas the Congress strongly rejects the racist and incendiary actions of the Reverend Al Sharpton, has referred to members of the Jewish faith as blood-sucking Jews and Jew bastards, has referred to members of the Jewish faith as white interlopers and diamond merchants, was found guilty of defamation by a jury in a New York court arising from the false accusation that former Assistant DA Stephen Pagonis, who is white, raped and assaulted a 15-year-old black girl. Whereas Reverend Al Sharpton has refused to accept responsibility, expresses no regret for defaming Mr. Pagonis. Whereas Reverend Al Sharpton's vicious verbal anti-Semitic attacks directed at members of the Jewish faith, and in particular a Jewish landlord arising from a simple landlord-tenant dispute with a black tenant, incited widespread violence, riots, and the murder of 5 innocent people. Sharpton's fierce demagoguery incited violence, riots, and murder in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn following the accidental death of a black pedestrian child hit by a motorcade of an Orthodox rabbi. Sharpton led a protest in the Crown Heights neighborhood marched next to a protester with a sign that read, "The white man is the devil," has insulted members of the Jewish faith by challenging Jews to violence and stating to Jews to pin down their yarmulkes. Sharpton has practiced the politics of racial division and made inflammatory remarks against whites by characterizing the death of Amadou Diallo as a racially motivated police assassination. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Congress condemns the practices of Reverend Al Sharpton, which seeks to divide Americans on the basis of race, ethnicity, and religion, expresses its outrage over the violence that has resulted due to Reverend Al Sharpton's incendiary words and actions, and fervently urges elected officials and public servants who have condoned and legitimized the Reverend Al Sharpton's incendiary words and actions to publicly denounce and condemn such racist and anti-Semitic views, end of quote. Again, Joe Scarborough. And now he goes on Joe Scarborough's show and gets licked to death by the same guy who introduced this resolution. What happened between then and now? Did Sharpton apologize for falsely accusing Stephen Pagonis of raping Tawana Brawley? No. Has he apologized for being in the streets of Ferguson yelling "no justice, no peace" before one word of testimony was taken? No. Has he apologized for getting involved in the Duke Lacrosse fake crime? No. The way this man got famous was falsely accusing a white, then assistant DA, of raping and assaulting Tawana Brawley. As was mentioned in the resolution, he was found unanimously liable for defamation by a multi-ethnic jury that included blacks. He was assessed a $250,000 judgment, he and two other defendants, and he didn't pay it. I know he didn't pay it because I interviewed the lawyer for Stephen Pagonis, and he said that Al Sharpton transferred all of his assets to his wife's name, didn't even have a credit card, so he couldn't get the money. And you recall Al Sharpton ran for president. He then knew failing to pay this judgment would be a liability, so his rich buddies in New York passed the hat, and then and only then was the debt paid. This guy was $5 million light in taxes, according to the New York Times. Whether he's caught up, I have no idea. Who do you know who's $5 million in taxes down, has a show, and is pushing for the party to raise taxes? As I said, open your dictionary under the word chutzpah, and there'll be a big picture of this man smiling. It is absolutely astounding to me.
It takes a lot of chutzpah.
Now, there is an economist named William Darity. In doing show prep this morning, I saw this article about him and video, and I said, I think I know this guy. I think he went to my college. And so I checked, and he did. We were in the same class together. His name is William Darity. I remember him as a nice guy, no chip on his shoulder, not angry about the man, not playing the race card the way many of the other black students did at my school. And now he is an economist and is pushing for reparations. And he added up the amount of money that he believes black people are entitled to because, after all, he says, because of slavery and Jim Crow, blacks were not able to match the economic progress of whites. So the assumption is, but for slavery, but for Jim Crow, blacks would be as wealthy as whites are, and therefore they need to be compensated. Really? So unequal outcomes means racism? Just asking, do white people have a lawsuit against the NBA because it's almost 80% black? You really think there would be 13% of doctors who are black, 13% of lawyers who are black, 13% of nuclear physicists who are black, but for slavery and Jim Crow? How do you prove that? And more importantly, what do the people walking on the face of the earth today have to do with that? Reparations, the extraction of money from people who were never slave owners to be given to people who were never slaves. The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. 888-971-SAGE. I am Larry O.